This is JT. I'm going to try to be as transparent as I can here. If you knew anything about the ministry that I began way back in like 2016, like I was told that I was supposed to be out here preaching the word, and I had no experience. I knew nothing about preaching. I knew certain versions or certain biblical verses, just like any other person. But I knew nothing about preaching, and I knew nothing about the spiritual warfare and the things you need to know in order to be equipped. And while I was out there, preaching, I found out, what it says, that, a person who was a novice would be lifted up by his pride and fall under the devil's condemnation. So it was like I was sent out there to be condemned. If you look at my earlier videos, you'll see that I was in much better shape. I was healthier, I was stronger, I was bigger. And it just reminds me of reading a comic book strip, Tales from the Crypt, where this man, he starts out and he's huge, he's big, he's strong. But then by the time they get done with him, he looks like a scrawny little wimp, and he's drawing circles in the sand, doing some kind of religious ritual, and not realizing that something just ain't right. I'm supposed to be growing, but I haven't grown. I've been stagnated, and in fact, I seem to be going down. Everything happens backwards. It says that 1 will chase 1,000, 2 will chase 10,000. I never get with 2. And matter of fact, it ain't but maybe 20 or something that chases me. And then I hear scriptures like, the wicked flee when no one is chasing them, or no, it's all kind of crazy stuff. Where was I? Now things don't make any sense, a little bit of sense. All we know that the nonsense grows, and the people that make sense seems to get more and more diminished. Lies seem to be rampant. People hate truth. What else? And we seem to be more and more about question about what's happening, derision and everything. Oh, and you also have the AI prophets. They're literally using tricks and traps in their speech. And they work real hard to get your attention, just like the other ones did. So it sounds like just a repeat of the same thing that came before they came. So when you tie it all together, it can only mean one thing. False God. Whoever this God is, he can't be who he says. He can't be the truth. He cannot be the way, and he cannot be the life, because he's bringing anti-life, anti-truth, the exact opposite of all this stuff. And everybody is focusing on everything else and not looking at him. And some people don't want to know this truth anyway. So it makes it very easy. So he has everybody looking at one person. He'll tell me to go out and do certain things and do this and do this and do that. But he's telling other people that I'm supposed to be over here doing something completely different that I don't even know about. And everybody's in derision. Why? Because they truly believe that is God. But let me tell you who he is, not by the J sphere in the mind. I'm going to tell you what it says in the bibliosphere, who he is. Wish I knew all the scriptures by heart. But the first one is, it says, this is what Paul says, the Antichrist. He is to come, and yet was already in the world. That was 2,000 years ago.
Now it says in it's that 2 Corinthians chapter 11. It says chapter 11 verse 4. It tells us that there's another spirit, there's another Jesus, and there's another gospel. And he said that if you receive these, then you might well bear with him. It doesn't tell you to rebuke this one. It's one in 1 Galatians 8 and 9 where he says, if you receive, or if anyone comes along preaching any other gospel to you, let him be accursed. Now, when you read it in context, you'll see that in Galatians 1, it's talking about, it says, not the gospel they preach, and they even talked about not that other gospel, which is of grace. So that's letting you know that there is a grace gospel and there is a true gospel. That grace gospel is the one that it says in 2 Corinthians 11:4, if you receive this, you might well bear with him. Because this is talking about the age of grace, the throne of grace, the gospel of grace. It's not the true gospel, but it brings grace. He said these are the two ordained gospels. If anybody brings any other gospel, that is not the truth. That is not of grace. They are to be accursed. And so people are believing all kind of gospels that's telling them all kind of stuff that are apart from these two gospels. And they're supposed to be accursed. However, I don't know if they're believing their superiors that they can strong arm God. But the thing is that there is a spirit that guides them. Now, who is this spirit? I'm going to take this to Revelation. Revelation chapter 9, where it talks about the spiritual locusts that come out of the ground. And it describes these locusts as having faces of men, hair of women, teeth of lions, crowns that's something like gold, not gold, but something like gold, tails where they sting like scorpions, and they're wearing iron breastplates. And it says they were allowed to torment people for 5 months. Now, unless you know the Hebrew, or you understand at least Hebrew numbers, meanings, and something about letters, you'd never know what that means, because 5 months doesn't tell you anything. But in the Hebrew, the number 5 represents grace. And the months represent a time period. So what it's telling you is that they would be allowed to torment people as long as they were under grace. The period that they would have grace, they would be able to torment people. So it's letting you know that these are tormenting spirits using people. When there were these prophets or whatever saying, I delivered them to the tormentors. These were the tormentors. When I came up against them in 2014, I was coming against this gospel where they were allowed the grace to torment people. That was the reason I became under attack by the very same spirit that people believe is Jesus. Now, this is who the spirit is, because when you read on in this scripture, it tells you that they had a king over them, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, whose name in Greek is Apollyon. Now, it's telling you a whole lot of things here. First, it's telling you that this is a false king of kings, and they're wearing false crowns, so they're not really kings and queens. They have a king over them. In Proverbs, it tells you that the locusts have no king because they work together, organized. So, but they have a king over them. Is the Bible contradicting itself? No. What it's telling you is that they were being led by this spirit, nudge, and they didn't even know. Now, it's also telling you his Hebrew name, which is Abaddon. Abaddon is the name in Hebrew. That's telling you that if you begin to study and search the Hebrew, you can find him in the Old Testament. Without knowing or studying the Hebrew, there's no way you can find him unless you ask somebody. So this is letting you know that beginning to study this language or this scripture in the Old Scripture, Testament, the original language that it came in, is crucial. And this is why it says in 2 Corinthians 11:3, I fear by any means that just the same way that the serpent tricked Eve will be the same way millions will be seduced away from the simplicity that is in the Messiah. Meaning the word is simple. And when you begin to understand and read it in the Hebrew, you see that it's very simple, but in another language, it's complicated. And that's why people have been tricked so easy. That's why he allowed for a gospel of grace to be able to keep people. Now let me show you how simple this is. People have been trying to figure out what the scripture means. The scripture that says that, what is it? What it says, that when people begin to receive the mark and the number of his name, that number is 666. This is where you get 666. And people have been trying to figure out what this means for centuries. You know, maybe it's 216, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Well, when you begin to understand the Hebrew, it's very simple. And I'm going to break it down to you. Okay, so I understand some of the numbers, not all, but I'll explain this. Number 1 is the number of unity. Number 2 is the number of separation. Number 3 is the number for God. That's why you see things come in threes all the time. That's the number for God. Number 4 is the number for holiness. It's also the number of earth. Number 5 is the number for grace. Number 6 is the number for falsehood. It's also the number for man. Number 7 is the number for completion. For in 6 days God created the world, and on day 7 he rested. 8 is the number of new beginnings. It's also the number of infinity. 9 is the number for truth. 12 is the number for perfect government. Now, let's take the number 3 for God and the number 6 for falsehood, which is also man. 666, 3 sixes, represents false God in the form of man. It's that simple. This is why I tell people, begin to study. The tools are available. You got the law of definitions that says study and look up every word in scripture. Because if you don't understand what the words say, then there's no way you can understand what the word is saying. If you don't understand what the words mean, you cannot understand what the word means. You know, and now I'm understanding why prophecy says a lot of these prophecies would not be understood until after they happen. Because we have been bamboozled by lying spirits so much that we're in derision and we're in confusion. And he's busy pointing his finger at this person, this person, this person, that person, when all the time nobody knows this is a lying spirit and this is the time of deception. So by him being a false king of kings, that also lets us know that this is the second fake God in the false or unholy Trinity. And since he is a spirit, now people don't know spirit law. Since they don't know spirit law, they get easily fooled into believing all kinds of doctrines that have nothing to do with what the scriptures say. Spirit law says that spirits are illegal in the earth unless they operate through demons. This is why demons seduce and lie and trick humans. Because if they didn't need them, they could just manifest and do whatever they wanted. Now, this is what I get when I look at Genesis 1:1. This will clear it up. In Genesis 1:1 it says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Now, in Hebrew it says Bereshit, which translates to in beginnings. And it also, goes forth, it says the earth was without form. But in the Hebrew it says the earth became without form. And that kind of aligns up with God, who creates everything perfect. He didn't create anything in turmoil or in chaos. So when he created the earth, it was created beautiful and perfect, and then it was thrown into chaos. So that means that those demons, or the demon that did that, had some astronomical power. And they can't do that because once man was created, he spoke over the earth and said, let man have dominion over all the earth. So that made all of the demons and all of the spirits illegal unless they operate through humans. And it limited God himself, because he's a man, he's faithful to his word. So this is why he operates through man himself. That's why it says in the Bible, I cannot find a man to stand in the gap. And so this is also why Yeshua, Jesus, when he came to earth, he had to have a body prepared for him so that he can operate legally on the earth. And the Apollyon has no body. He needs one. Now the scriptures say that the earth, that people will behold. That means they will see him portray himself as God. So at that point, he'll be operating in the body. So where is he going to get his body from? I'm glad you asked, because we're coming into the age of kingdom. We're living the age of grace and coming into the age of kingdom. Many people think that the earth is coming to an end. No, the world's not coming to an end. Just the age of grace is ending. And we're coming into the age of kingdom. In the age of kingdom, it's different from the other ages, because in the other ages, man could exercise authority and rule as kings. But in the age of the kingdom, there are only two. And they're both spirits. So these are spiritual kingdoms that are coming in. So anyone building any other type of kingdom during this time has been bamboozled, fooled, used, ruled, tooled, schooled, ridiculed, and any other rule. And I've been telling them, I said, the Bible clearly says that if you lead into captivity, you yourself must go into captivity. So that means that that person is wasting his time building the kingdom, because it says as soon as he's done, he might as well hand the keys over and go sit inside the prison cell. And that's how simple it is. But people just think that they can overrule this world. Maybe it's not real. Maybe God ain't liar, ain't this, that. But remember Paul said, if there's no resurrection, this whole faith is worthless. And people have been trying to disprove this for centuries, saying man wrote the Bible. Man is not going to write a word that completely goes contradictory to what he wants, and then spend 2,000 years trying to get rid of it. Makes no sense. So that's just food for thought. Stay tuned.